warning for.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Flood City with your host, Czar Peppers. Sorry about the sound quality of my voice. I'm using a different mic today because it's hot as hell and I'm not turning off my fan for this because otherwise I'll just boil. And with my other mic, it would be like the whole time, so I'm using this mic instead. The city's gotten quite a bit bigger. This whole huge area down here is pretty much completely new. And this area has been building up quite well. But today's not really about that, because today is the 1 in 50 year flood. The flood forecast today is a flood of 0.97. For context, the last flood was I think it was a 0.72, and the one before that was a 0.63 or something. So this is going to be a big one. Now let's go over our people for today. We've got Oran Somers, who is an elderly gentleman at this point, still living in his home, designer of the Oran Spillway. Right, you can see right down here, this complex. And he's lived a full life, and he's now in his old age, living in his house that hopefully doesn't get completely submerged. And now we have Orlando Summers, who is the designer of this particular spillway. We call it the, I don't know what we're calling it. Oh, hey, there's two people on the same train. I wonder who they are. I think it's Awesomeness and Bob Teague. Oh, yeah, and I named a neighborhood after Sir Seals, as his two tragic deaths were a heartbreak for our community. Anyways, Orlando Summers lives right over here, quite close to his creation. So if his creation fails, then he's kind of screwed. Master Chief 2000, you live down here by the World Trade Centers. You're pretty safe. I don't think you have much to worry about. AJ Murphy, you're just hanging out at home right down here, sort of near where the other guys live in Sir Seals Park. Awesomeness just got off the train. Oh, I think you're waiting for a subway or something. Yeah, you're waiting for the subway. And Bob Teague, the new Bob Teague, the resurrected Bob Teague, is walking somewhere. I guess he's at home. That's his house right there. So those are our people for today. Sad news, though, because Fox the Gamer has sadly passed away at the age of 90 something. He will be remembered. Let's have a moment of silence. Okay, that's enough. Now, time to get to the flooding. Now, I'm going to switch to day because it can be kind of hard to see the flooding action at nighttime. So yeah, this is a significant new area. Probably this is the one area of the city where there's this is probably the second biggest portion of the city, whereas this is the first now, I believe. Created a new highway system, expressway that can go down to the south very quickly, because I was finding traffic was building up quite badly on the inner roads, which they are still kind of jammed up. And yeah, other than this area, there isn't that much that's new. This was built in the last episode, and it's built up quite nicely here. I have done some work on the transit lines, a new train line sort of public transit train line that goes from here over to here. I have sort of three levels. I've got the subway systems, the train lines, which sort of go between the different areas of the city, and then you have the subways, which service the main under the main roads of each area, and the buses, which then service everything else. So it's a pretty comprehensive transit system so far. And here we have our landmark building of today, or in this case, two buildings. Two of my favorite buildings of all time, the original World Trade Center, the Twin Towers. As a kid, I was obsessed with these wonderful buildings. In fact, I had actually convinced my dad that we could go to New York and see them. However, that was in August of 2001, so that never happened. But I normally don't really like this kind of modern architecture, but I like the cleanliness of them. I love the angles and the clean. I've always loved these down here, these sort of arrow windows that go up into the skinnier kind of windows. They were built in 1973, I think. I could be wrong. I'm guessing there. It was definitely built in the 70s. Steel framed building. And yes, fire doesn't melt steel beams, but it does weaken it by 50%, which is a significant amount. But I'm not going to go into that too much. But yeah, they're two pretty wonderful buildings. So they survived quite a bit. I believe there was a fire in them in the 70s or 80s. There was the early 1990s, 1993 bombing in the parking lot, which was Osama bin Laden, and of course the one that everybody knows. In fact, earlier one of them was kind of on fire, which was kind of awkward. Anyways, moving on. Let's just take a quick look at what people are up to right now. Anyone awesomeness seems to be going to work, waiting for the subway train, and Bob Teague's working at the company. Actually, let's change that. There. You work for that. Oran Somers was relaxing, watching MASH or something in his retirement years in his rather nice house. Well, I think it's kind of ugly. It's just not my style, but I suppose it's high wealth, isn't it? It's his... Yeah, I think it is the highest wealth. So, you've got 4 children, all young adults. Wow, there are 8 seniors living in your house. That must be a bit cramped. Maybe you're a polygamist or something. Polygamist, fundamentalist Mormon. I don't know. I'm going to get into trouble for saying stuff like that. Well, no rise in water levels yet, which is... Oh yeah, I added a mod. I forget what it's called, but it actually... When it rains, it actually adds extra water flow. It adds that water into the rivers and stuff, so I don't have to manually add that anymore. So when it does rain, it will actually increase the water levels, and it does a few other things. It's like you can control temperature, rainfall, ground wetness, sea level, and all that kind of stuff, which is kind of cool. It looks like Somers is going out for a walk or something. They're going to the Gigastore. Let's follow your exciting journey to the store. Look at this cane. Look at that cane. There's a classy old fella right there, eh? It's starting. The first signs of the flood. Oran Somers still on the train. Trains are getting a bit clogged up here. All right, now he's probably going to have to make a transfer here. Here he goes on the Southern Line. Probably going to have to wait for a bit. Looks like everybody else is just kicking their legs up at home. Orlando Somers up here. Master Chief down here in the Broad District. AJ Murphy over here in Sir Seals Park. Awesomeness over here, also in Sir Seals Park, I believe. Or Lake Park, I guess. What neighborhood is that? Oh, no, it's the Fox District, which is named after Fox the Gamer. And this right here is the Fox the Gamer University for our notable citizens. And Bob Teague, the resurrected Bob Teague, is living up. He lives in. Oh no, he lives in Lake Park. I bet Oren is gonna die waiting for this subway train. Listen to all those animals who are probably gonna drown any minute. The first signs of the flooding are making themselves clear. Now I have done some repairs from the last flood to this particular dike system. There is some weak points right here and over here, actually before the flood hits. My rule is once the flood has hit, I cannot make any modifications to the flood barriers, but it hasn't hit yet, so I want to kind of work on this part, which was kind of weak in the last one. So we will just bring this up as much as I can. Can't really do a whole lot because the buildings are kind of in the way. You know what? For the greater good. For the greater good. Gonna have to demolish those people's houses. There was also a rather weak portion down here, so I have raised this dike a little bit. Fortunately, I don't really have room for a flood wall here, so this dike system from the second episode is just gonna have to suffice. Oh, it looks like Summers has finally caught the train going down to the Gigastore on the Southern Line. Now, I thought I'd show you how this new spillway works. It was inspired by Orlando Summers. That goes up. There's a first line of defense dike right here, because this is probably the most vulnerable part of the city. It's huge and it's very low, and if water floods through here, it's just going to flood all of this. So I made this particular style of spillway here, which has this dike, and then after that dike, it has a spillway that directs the water down the creek or sort of valley down here, bypassing the major portion of the city. So hopefully that'll work. This area isn't quite as critical because it's higher than it is over here. And this area should be all right. Depending on how it works, I may extend this to go all the way down here, but that would involve having to rebuild all these highway exits and stuff, which I didn't feel like doing quite yet. So we'll just have to see how it works during this flood. It looks like Sommers is finally making his way to the Gigastore. Not sure whether he's going to get off the stop or the next one. Probably one of the next ones. There he is with his cane and all. Sorry if there were some quiet parts with the vocals. I'm sort of getting used to having to have my lips right on the mic. Oh boy, this is quite high. Not quite sure how it compares to last time though. It is. I put this lighthouse here for kind of a reference, and the water hasn't really risen that much down this far yet. Seems all right down here for now. It seems like it's not, maybe a little higher than normal. Oh, it is starting to make its way into the spillway though. Waters are rising down here. Quite quickly it seems. Spillway functioning as it should, redirecting the water down this small river, the Insane River. Just a quick recap of all the different... This is the Insane River. This is the Rouge. This is the Asinine. And this is more of a creek, really. It's not really a river. It probably will become a river when the flood gets bad enough, but for now it's just a creek. Now, this particular passenger train right here is part of our express transit system, which services transportation between the different segments of the city, the north, the west, east, south, whatnot. All right, waters are rising pretty quickly down here now. The spillway is starting to redirect that water down to The Insane River. Hasn't quite. I put this here, which only starts to flow this water into the river once it's gotten to a certain point, and it seems to be almost getting to that point where it will start diverting this water down that river. Spillway is working quite well now. That water is starting to make its way down. All right, I need to remember to talk near the mic. I'm sorry if I'm forgetting to do that, guys. Okay. So that's working as it should. Water doesn't seem to be threatening these neighborhoods at the moment. Their dikes are still just checking for weak spots. This is probably the weakest portion of this dike right here. Of course, I can't do anything now because the flood has started. But the floodwaters haven't made their way all the way down here yet. This is just the beginning. It is going to get far worse than this. Well, since I had some commercial demand, I decided to add a little more commercial here. And due to residential demand, I thought I'd make a new neighborhood right here with this nice little park that I've just constructed with an elementary school and a high school right beside the garbage dump and the graveyard. What's with me and putting schools right by graveyards? I always seem to do that. Moving back up here, it does look like waters are right. Oh boy. Okay, we do have a weak spot in this. It looks like this area is going to suffer the same fate it did last time due to this portion of the dike right here that I must have messed up. The Oran Summers spillway and dike system seems to be working well down here, though. Water still has to rise quite a bit in order to threaten his neighborhood. Spillway is directing that water down here, and it's almost making its way down to this area, at which point it'll start just flowing down the river. Our little pier area is starting to get a bit flooded out. The docks for pleasure craft. But otherwise, we also have this new area right here. There used to be an industrial park in this area, but I decided to rip it down because it was a nice area to construct a nice little tourist district and whatnot with a science center and some nice landmark buildings. But the pathway right here is starting to get flooded out. This area, I sort of forgot about this area. There could be some problems. Certainly, there could be some problems. As for our citizens, it looks like Oran Sommers is heading home. Orlando Summers is confused right now. That sort of happens sometimes when players glitch out, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything bad. Although sometimes it means you're dead, but let's hope for the best, Summers. Master Chief is at home. AJ Murphy is also confused. Bob Teague is working. And Awesomeness is at home. The Sommers residence still looks pretty precarious, but it's going to take quite a high river in order to flood this area. So I think you're looking all right for now, Mr. Sommers. The spillway is now flowing all the way into the Insane River, which will then try and divert some of that water down out of the city that way. And some of this little park right here is beginning to flood out at the fork in the river. Here, it's going to have to raise quite a bit in order to threaten this area. It is a bit of a weak spot, though, because there is the flood wall which protects this area, but if it gets too high on the Asinine River, then it could flood this area from behind, so it's going to be worth keeping an eye on. Water is there is quite a big flow going down the creek now. Now here there is also sort of a dam which will hold the water until it gets to a certain level, at which point it will start flowing down this spillway, because I wanted to keep that spillway mainly for this water if this overflew, so to keep this out of there for added diversionary abilities or something. Looks like Somers is finally making his way back to his house in his neighborhood. Master Chief is currently going to Boutiques Galore shopping mall in the Southern District. And everybody else is at home or at work. You can see everybody on the map with their little thingamajigs, little blue blops of indicatingness. And it looks like this bridge is starting to get flooded out again, which happened in the last flood. The waters are starting to rise down here now. You can see that the water levels are getting pretty high on that bridge. And this dike is still pretty... it's going to take a lot more to make this go into the spillway. This is probably one of the safest areas in the city. But you never know. You never know. The Somers Spillway is working really well right now, though. It's diverting all that water down and out of the city that way. All right, we are starting to run into some problems down here on this portion of the dike. I did raise it a bit since the last episode because we had this problem last time, but I guess it wasn't enough. It really doesn't seem like it's overflowing anywhere, but it's flooding nonetheless. But it's a relatively small portion of the city. It may put this bridge out of commission for the moment, but it's not the end of the world, and this neighborhood is still quite safe. Although waters are getting pretty close to the top of this dike. Particularly right there and right here could be problem spots. Uh-oh. Oh no. The Somers home was flooded briefly. It is starting to overtake this dike quite badly, flooding out the parkway, going into the neighborhood. At the moment, the Somers home is still all right, but it's looking pretty precarious right now. This dike is failing. Just want to take a look at the water flow. It's flowing quite strongly down this portion of the river and into the Asinine River and down south. It does let up a bit down here. It is flowing very strongly into the spillway, which then is diverting it into this river down here. Well, Somers, looks like you're flooded out right now. Your home is flooded. You're probably watching TV with a few feet of water around your ankles at the moment. Although it's sort of switching between flooded and unflooded, so it's not too bad at the moment. At least you don't live here, where the only place these people can hang out is on the roofs. Except this guy. This guy's just screwed. As for some of our other citizens, who is this? Awesomeness is currently traveling to work in the, pretty close to the flooded area. Where does he work anyways? Awesomeness. You work right here. Okay. Well, it's not too bad. Okay, we are starting to get some pretty serious flooding over here now. It looks like these dikes have really just failed at this point. I'm not sure if these buildings will be flooded for so long that they'll become abandoned, but it is starting to look pretty precarious. Alright, now a massive portion of this part of the city is now flooded out. The park is flooded out here, the bridge. It's still pretty good here. It has to go up quite a bit more to flood this area, but the bicycle path is flooded out. This is the worst hit area, though, including the Somers residence, which is actually not... Oh, now it's flooded again. It's off and on. It's not too bad up here. It just seems to be a little bit of water. But down here, it is starting to get quite bad, at least car level. And look at all these people swimming, going for a swim in the water. What a pleasant day. At least it's warm out. It's 27 degrees. Perfect day for a dip. I have some sad news to tell you, my friends. Oran Somers has passed away, drowning in 2 feet of water. Tripped over an extension cord and just couldn't get up. We will remember you, and you will be memorialized for your efforts to save our city. In fact, you know what we're going to do? We're going to make a memorial to remember your great stuff. Here we go. We'll put it right here. It will be the Oran Somers remembrance thing. You will be remembered for the whole time the city lives. Alright, a state of emergency has been declared. Much of the city is flooded out. The neighborhood is severely hit by this 1 in 50-year flood, which has completely overwhelmed this neighborhood's flood defenses. Now the insane river is really starting to fill up. I mean, this was pretty much empty before. It is now starting to pour over this barricade and starting to flow down here. But that is getting pretty high in this area. All the way down. It's made it to the bottom. Yeah, it has. It's going all the way down. We're starting to. Up here we have a large portion of the city now flooded out. Trees dying. Grass being made askew. Although no abandoned places yet. And it seems there are still all sorts of teenagers hanging out at school about to die in a horrible flood, I guess. Run! Run while you still can. Don't sit at the picnic tables. Don't do it. These guys have the right idea. Get the hell out of there. Jeez. Wow, water's rising pretty high out over here. And actually, come to think of it, this neighborhood is pretty close to being threatened. The water levels are starting to get pretty high on that bank. Here on this side, it's still pretty safe. Still got a ways to go. But this area is under threat, and there's one house flooded. One house. Alright, the waters have now reached their climax. The flood is over, and it'll take some time for the water to go down and the true damage to be revealed. We've lost a good portion of this neighborhood. Unfortunately, the Oran Summers Spillway was very effective against the lesser floods, but this just overflew it completely. It will definitely need some upgrades for flooding in the future. For the 1 in 100 year and the 1 in 500 year floods will definitely need some improvements. This area is once again flooded. I think I'm going to have to upgrade this area so it has a flood wall, demolish some houses along the edges. This area, I might do the same thing. Could really use a proper flood wall in here. However, the Orlando Summers flood prevention system has worked very well in this case and protected the most populated area of the city. Because as you can see, if I go into the terrain view, this whole area is basically a big dip, and it's below sea level, so if it does come over here, that area is probably going to be completely flooded out, similar to that one area in the last flood city. But I suppose this is where we'll leave it for today. Good night.